Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SimNFL show, real talk about fake sports. I am your host and commissioner, you can call me Pierce. It's been a while, guys. A lot has happened. We're in the off-season of a new year. Lots of going on, lots have shifted. We've got new members, we've got changes throughout the league. So we're going to catch you up on everything that's happened at a high level here today. So let's go ahead and jump in. So today we're going to talk about some sim updates, both things that pertain specifically to the NFL and some things as relates to the football engine, some of which have happened, some of which are in process. We're going to cover all of those. We're going to look at progressions at a high level, see how players improved in the NFL sim and some numbers there. We're going to talk about extensions, look at some big contracts that were signed, and some new ceilings that we've achieved at certain positions as stars go ahead and sign those big deals to stay on their teams. I was going to talk about free agency, but a lot of the big names are still negotiating, so we'll have to cover that later. Obviously, the big upcoming thing is the draft, so we'll look at combine results and some players that really did themselves a favor at the combine, and we'll talk about other things pertaining to the draft. And then finally, the 2025 NFL schedule has been made, and we're going to release that near the end of the video. So that's full schedule, every week, all primetime games, everything is done and ready to be published. So we'll talk about that there at the end. Okay, so things that are new in the sim. First off, the big news, as was covered in Dev Diary 133, the progression update. No longer are all players on the same progression track. Now it depends on their primary position, and each position has been assigned a prime age. So players will progress toward that point and then start to regress after that. Prime age is, again, determined by position. So the big changes you'll see there are lower prime age for running backs and fullbacks. So they will start to regress quicker, and then higher prime ages for quarterbacks and specialists. So they will have longer times to develop. Their peaks are much later. Also, any player at any position can have what's called venerable status, which basically means their prime age is increased by a certain deviation. So they will be more viable longer compared to the rest of their peers at their position. But that's a hidden feature. There's no way to know that except to track the player's career. Another thing that we're adding is a boom and bust mechanic. We're doing that both at the college and at the pro level. At college, it is affected when players are recruited and then added to rosters. So after recruit commits, then when they're added to the roster, they have a chance to boom or bust. And with NFL, it's as they get ready to be drafted. So once they finish their senior year, they could get an additional progression as they enter the draft pool. So that's what boom or bust is. It's basically, I think, a 1 in 20 chance, a 5% chance, to either get an additional progression on top of their normal one, or to regress a couple of points in key attributes. In college football, it happens once if you boom or bust. In the NFL, there's a tiered system where it could happen 1, 2, or even 3 times. So I think 70% of the booms or busts are going to be a single time. There's a 20% chance that it could happen twice, and even a 10% chance it could happen 3 times. So you could have players in the draft pool that have now had multiple progressions on top of their senior year, so they can rise very rapidly. I like this mechanic for 2 reasons. One, it has possibility for a little more randomness, a little more uncertainty in drafts, and it improves the need to review prospects and spend your scouting points. Obviously, you still have the combine results and things like that, but there's more variability, so there's more to look for, not just letter grades and combine results and statistics. And additionally, the second thing I like about that is boom rookies after a boom mechanic have more chance of being viable early, so they're more likely to get playing time and more likely to progress stronger. Another thing that's been added, which has already been included in Dev Diary, is secondary positions. Players that now play a significant amount of time, either in college or the pros, can get a secondary position, and they won't get an out-of-position penalty if they play at that position once they've had a certain number of snaps. And those, for players who already achieved that in college, that should be listed in the draft book. so they should be listed as being viable at both positions. As far as I know, prime age is still determined by their primary position and will not change. But if that changes, I will let you know. Or if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. A couple other things that are in process for the football engine in total, so this will affect both college and pro. Pass rush is getting a complete overhaul, basically trying to get rid of the heavy blitz meta that came out last season, trying to make it so that pass rushing, if you have a strong front four or strong edge rushers, pass rushing is absolutely viable. They should be able to win their one-on-one matchups and get pressure. And if you don't, blitzing should also be viable to get pressure, but it should come with significant drawbacks and risks in both the passing and the running game. Yeah, that is all in process, but that whole system is getting looked at. So you should no longer need to blitz to gain a pass rush consistently if you have good rushers. And also there should be significant drawbacks so that you can't just blitz constantly and rack up double-digit sacks, as was the case. So that's in process. Obviously, once it's done, Rocket will have more exact details on, what conclusions we came to and what the new mechanics are. But that is in the works. The other thing that we've been working on is fixing fourth of down and end of half play calling. So basically getting rid of going for it deep in your own territory, or punting when you're just out of field goal range on the other side of the field, or running out the clock at the end of a half when you could kick a field goal even if it's not fourth down. So those are all things that are in process. I mean, a lot of things are in process. Rocket and Tuscan and everyone at the admin group is doing a whole bunch of work to improve things for next year. But those are two things I wanted to highlight for the NFL watchers out there. All right, so now we're going to talk about progressions that happened in 2024. I do apologize, the file that I'm going from, all the rookies still had letter grades. So all of this data is for non-rookies in the NFL. They have been excluded from this count. But again, it's a large enough, most of which we're looking at is a large sample size, so the information should still be viable. I just don't have details on how the rookies progress at a player level. But for all non-rookies, the average player progression was 2.7 points for overall. Overall is the simplest way to track lots of data. Overall is not the be-all, end-all of a player's viability. You can have low overall players who have a single really good attribute, like a defender who's really good in run defense or pass rush, or a blocker who's really good at one type of blocking. That still makes them viable. The most common progression for a player was actually +4. We're pretty close on the +3s and the +4s, as you can see in the chart there. +4 was a little bit more common. So in general, you're seeing an overall improvement in rosters, which is what we expect as the sim develops. You'll also see the floor getting raised in terms of what's viable to be on a roster, going from low to mid to even high 60s now. You'll see a lot of free agents in that mid to high 60s range that are available for relatively cheap. So just don't forget, as your roster improves, everyone else is improving too. We didn't have any +7s this year, as in previous years. We had 44 players go +6. That was the highest progression we saw for any individual. We had 10 players that went -5 or worse without retiring, because this is all from active players, with the lowest being a single -8 from a 35-year-old running back under the new prime age mechanics. So by position, by experience, this is how the average progressions look. I will say experience is not the best way to look at this. The best way is by age. But the way the incoming draft classes we have basically a year gap in the age. I think it's either 26 or 27. There's no players in the NFL that are listed as being that age. So if I had this pivot table by age, there would be a weird gap in the middle. So now I'm doing it by experience, but we're going to get more variances on the incoming age of players. So eventually, the right way to look at this data will be by age, not by experience in the league. But for now, it works well enough. And you can see the changes in the prime age mechanics here. You can see running back and fullback regressing quicker and more rapidly as they age. And you can see quarterbacks and kickers having a much longer ramp up and improving even in like their 10th season and onward. Punting looks a little weird, I think just because there are so few punters in the league. Punting is viable. Punting is really good in the sim, so you don't need to have a really good punter. So there might be experienced punters who are not getting playing time. I think that might be the case for some of the big negatives down there. But otherwise, you can see, in general, the improvements. Players improve most when they're young, and then as they get older, you can start to see the prime age mechanics start to have an impact there. So here are the highest overall players going into the 2025 season. We now have 14 players that are 90 or higher in overall. Our two highest rated players remain Chad Bruce and Oscar Martinez. They are now 93 in their 7th season. And then right behind them is Dallas wide receiver Christopher Lee, who's a 92. But certainly vying for those numbers in their future, we now have 3 players who are age 25 who are already 75 or higher. Jay Ginn is 78, Ryan Johnson 77, and then another Dallas Cowboy, Amar Rodriguez, is a 76. So these players are all entering their 4th year. They were first-round picks in the original draft in 2022, and are now high 70s and could easily be mid-90s by the time they peak. Looking at all 3 seasons in total, we've had 16 players go plus 16 or better over the course of 3 seasons. These 3 in particular have gone plus 18. They've gone plus 6 every single year. And that's Aaron Stokes and Herman Knott, who have gone from high 60s to mid 80s. And then another Dallas Cowboy, incredibly, Stephen Othon, who's gone from 57 to a 75 in 3 seasons of play. On the other side, we have 10 active players, so players who have not yet made the decision to retire, who have gone minus 10 or less, or worse, in the 3 seasons. Running back David Peregrine is now a 62, and wide receiver Franco Milton, who recently got traded, is a 67. Those players have gone, so Peregrine has gone minus 14, he's 35 years old, and Milton I think is also 35, and he has gone minus 12. So that's at the other end of the spectrum. So that's it for the progression discussion. Now we're going to talk about extensions, teams that have shelled out big money to keep veterans around. The biggest name going into this offseason, I thought, was Dean Hammonds, the highest rated pure passer in the league for Miami. And what was his contract going to look like? Miami went fully guaranteed with this, which I thought there should be some salary in there. I will take a look at that. But they went $48 million guaranteed over 4 years. So basically upping the guaranteed percentage to keep the total dollars low. Hammonds is their guy for the future. They know it. He's going to stick around. So $12 million a year guaranteed for him over the next 4 seasons. On the other side of things, in the NFC, Gerald Lewis, another pocket passer, got a really big contract. So you can see here the difference in the numbers. Only about half guaranteed for him, but that inflated the total pay to $62.5 million. So basically what that gives the Bears is an extra year of variability on the end. So basically after 2 years, in year 3, it will, with half guaranteed, it means it would cost about as much to keep him and play him as to set him loose. Because in year 3, you either pay him bonus and salary, or you cut him or trade him and pay year 3 bonus, year 4 bonus, which are at that point about the same. So that's basically what that gives them, is they pay him more, but that gives him a little bit more leeway on the back end if he should regress super hard, although again with the new prime age mechanics, probably not going to be an issue, especially for a pocket passer. But $62 million over 4 years for Gerald Lewis. Daniel Ellswick of the Colts, one of the top-rated and very young receivers in the league, gets a big payday. 5-year deal for $65 million. Again, keeping the guarantees low, causing the price to go up. Another receiver for the Giants, Matthew Madden, 82 overall, a little bit more experience with entering his 9th year. He gets $55 million for 5 years. And then 2 big linemen with big paydays, Nelson Garcia, $67 million, and then the big contract, Ramon Diaz, who is a 90 overall and still yet to reach his peak. So Hall of Fame candidate here, and he gets a Hall of Fame payday, $79 million over 5 years, with almost 76% of that guaranteed. So a huge payday for Diaz, and a big move by the Chargers to keep their Pro Bowl linemen around for a long time. On the defensive side, we have Seattle showing up their front 7 with Paul Huffman and Brandon Schroeder, getting a combined almost $105 million for the two of them. Schroeder in particular, again, an 88 overall entering his 5th season. That's absolutely crazy. He gets $64.4 million over 5 years. A couple other linebackers to note: Kirk Ridley of Jacksonville and Russell Crowe of Cincinnati, both getting in the range of about $50 million a year for the next 4 years for those guys. And then Alvin Anan of Buffalo, cornerback, getting $52.8 million over 5 years. And Chicago Bears' Calvin Preston, their do-it-all strong safety, getting $75 million over 5 years, making him one of the highest-paid defensive players in the league. And he should be set for the rest of his career, as he's entering his 8th year already. So those are some of the big highlight-grabbing numbers that I saw from the extensions market. In the comments, let me know if I missed anyone or what your favorite veteran player is on your team that you're happy to have around for the future. So here are the most current draft numbers. These are updated as of this morning, Tuesday morning. So again, the draft is going to be December 13th through 15th, exact times to be announced. That's Friday through Sunday. We have Arizona currently has 20 total picks. I know it says 19 on the interface, so we're going to get that fixed. And so they have the biggest, the most number of picks, the most top 100 picks, tied with Minnesota for 7, and then certainly the biggest payday for their picks. They'll need to shell out almost $27 million a year at the current limit of what they have for those players. Also worthy of note, Kansas City has 15 picks, 2 in the first round, also 7 of the top 100. They're looking at $24.5 million for their picks. All the way down to the bottom to Denver, who has traded away even their compensatory selections. They have no selections left in this year. Tennessee has 2 for $3 million at the other end of that list. So yeah, these are the picks as they currently stand, although I expect a lot of trading to continue as we get close to and into the draft. Speaking of which, there are a handful of players that I thought really shone at the Combine, really improved their draft stock. So this is a comparison of the book grade, as it is listed for them in the draft book, and their Combine scores. It's based on nothing else. I don't have scouting data on any of these guys, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. But if there's a secret in here that you were hoping to keep, sorry. This is just who I saw that there was a big discrepancy between their listed grade and their Combine performance. Whether that's a flash in the pan or that's real, I don't know. But certainly I thought it was worthy of mention. So the first, Will Huber of Cincinnati, listed as a B overall, but had the 4th highest catching score at the Combine at a 9.73, and the 4th highest route running score at 10.7. And there was no other overlap in the top 3 in either category. So, phenomenal performance from Huber as a B overall, looking to make his mark in the draft. Similarly, Ray Scott of UAB, a lot of focus has been put on the quarterbacks in this draft. I think there are 4 A-plus quarterbacks listed. Expected to have multiple first-round selections, multiple franchise quarterbacks in this draft. But Scott really helped his draft status. 5th with his accuracy score, 7th with his distance score. Which, again, for someone listed as a B- is a huge performance, especially in a class this deep. So, big performance from Scott. Interested to see where he will land on draft day, but certainly seems worthy of a pick. Roy Clark from Miami of Ohio, a C-plus listed player, but had a 4.3 40-yard dash, fastest in the Combine, tied with, there were 10 total players that ran a 4.3. He was one of them. Speed back, obviously, but also had an 8.98 for his inside run score. That was good for 6th. And then 8.44 for his outside run, which is tied for 17th, which is not outstanding. But again, this is a C-plus graded player, and the running backs in this draft are particularly deep, at least looking by their grade. There were something like 40 backs invited to the Combine. That's just how many there were that were, in that B-plus or better range. So for an astonishingly deep class, to be a C-plus player and have your lowest score be a 17th is pretty incredible, especially if you're that fast. So again, another story that'll be interesting to watch on draft day if Clark can break through that deep class and get a roster spot. Another person I wanted to highlight, Marco Gurka, cornerback from Indiana. Another B overall that was a top 6 performer. His 9.62 zone cover score was the 5th highest zone score among cornerbacks and the 6th highest cover score among cornerbacks. So it's a strong zone draft if that's what you run. And a strong performance for Gurker, another B overall, who are looking to break into the upper echelon in the draft. And then finally, Kelvin Sanchez of UTEP, a B overall free safety, who had a 9.44 zone cover score. That is second among free safeties in cover score and third among all safeties in cover score. And then also posted an impressive shuttle drill, which similarly second among free safeties, third among all safeties. So again, B overall, but outstanding performance at the Combine. Some exciting stories to be had there in the draft. So some of my big questions going into the draft: how many quarterbacks are we going to see go in that first round? Are we going to see more trades in like that top 10 status? Are those teams ready to go, or is someone going to make a big move up? And then will position scarcity create a reach? We've talked about a deep running back class. We've talked about a strong quarterback class. There are some positions that are not so deep. I think particularly man cornerbacks is one. Non-pass rushing outside linebackers, so speed or coverage types. Linebackers in general seem pretty thin for yet another year in a row. Our teams maybe going to make a reach at a position of need when there's not a lot of depth there. Remains to be seen, but always a big question going into the draft. Okay, so it's time to talk about the 2025 NFL schedule. So the rules for the schedule are very prescriptive. The teams that you play in the regular season are all automatically figured out based on the following rubric. You always play your division opponents, home and away. That's 6 games. You play another division in your own conference, 2 home, 2 away, so that's another 4. You play an entire division in the opposite conference, that's 4 more games. And then for the 2 divisions in your conference that you don't have scheduled games for yet, you play one from each division who is ranked the same as you. So for example, the AFC East, as we can see, is playing every team in the AFC South. So as far as the North and West goes, if you won the AFC East, you'll play the winners of the AFC North and West. If you finished second in the East, you'll play the second-ranked team in the North and West, and then third and fourth as well. So that's 2 more games, and then the 17th game of the season is another cross-conference game with the same rule, in that you play a team in a different division that is ranked the same as you last year. And for that, home and away is decided at a conference level. So last year, the NFC had all the home games, and this year it's the AFC. And that way the playoffs race is fair. So if you're in the AFC and you have 9 home games, you're competing for the playoffs against other teams that had 9 home games. In the NFC, if you only had 8, you're competing for playoff time against other teams that only had 8. So that's why that's done. So those are all the matchups that are decided. Of particular notice this year, this is the first time that the NFC East and the AFC North are going head-to-head. So that's 16 games to watch out for. Those are 2 of the deepest divisions in football. Last year, the 4th-ranked team in the NFC East was 9-8, and in the AFC North was 8-9. So these teams won about as much as they lost, and they were at the bottom of those divisions, which shows just how deep and how strong they are. Those divisions are going head-to-head this year. So 16 very strong non-conference games that I am looking forward to. So, without further ado, here is the 2025 NFL schedule. Over on the left, you can see the teams and the order in which they finished in their division last year. At the top, you can see weeks 1 through 18. Byes are in weeks 6 through 14, in black there. And then week 18, per sim rules, is always division games. I did week 18 first because I don't want to be responsible for figuring out who gets to end the season at home. So opponents and home teams for Week 18 were done first and randomly. I used a randomizer to decide the matchups and the home teams, and then worked from there. Because I didn't want that to be a personal decision where I get to choose which teams get that advantage of playing their final game at home. You will also see different color borders. Those are for primetime games. So all the green borders, those are for Thursday night. As is tradition, we start the season with the Super Bowl champion at home on the first primetime game. So the first game of this season will be Tampa Bay at Dallas. Our Super Bowl champion Cowboys will start at home on Thursday night. And then our first Sunday night game with the orange border is Carolina at Denver. And then in the blue border, Monday night, we'll start with the Rams at the Jets. And so there is one of each of those in every single week. The only exceptions are Week 12, which is our Thanksgiving. Instead of a single Thursday night game, we have 2 Thursday games, which are hosted by Dallas and Detroit. Again, per Thanksgiving tradition. So this year it'll be Pittsburgh at Dallas, and then Buffalo at Detroit will be our Thanksgiving games. And then the final week of the season, there is no Thursday or Monday game. There is only Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and then a single Sunday night game, which this year is going to be Cleveland at Cincinnati. That'll be the final regular season game. In general, I try to spread out the primetime games as much as I can. I want every team to have at least a couple. So every team has 2, and then teams might have 4 or 5 based on their performance last year. So this year, Denver has 5 primetime games. Dallas has 5, including the Thanksgiving game. And then lots of other division winners have 4. But I do try to spread those around because there's no financial benefit, and some owners might like the extra tension, some owners might not like being off schedule, so I try to split those up as much as I can. But that is the full schedule. That's all the primetime games, all the matchups for every week. Yep, and I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to a new season. So that is all I have for today on our off-season edition of the SimNFL show. Thank you so much for listening along and joining me here today. I will see you, if I don't talk to you soon, I will see you at the draft.